I think good taste is the only real mode left. Now that AI has made competent output cheaper than ever, the question is, how can we build a real advantage when anyone can generate a good enough first draft in seconds? In an era of abundant AI-generated code, your most valuable skill is no longer writing code, but judgment. These things that we can call taste. LLMs can generate a landing page, a product memo, or a polished pitch deck in minutes. They are extraordinary pattern matching engines. However, the risk is a world flooded with generic 7 out of 10 work. If you stop at the first acceptable draft and AI gives you, your work becomes forgettable and your role becomes fragile. And this is not the theoretical problem. After working with these models to generate thousands of outputs, I can recognize very clearly what patterns separate valuable contributions from disposable noise. So in this video, I will cover first what taste actually means in an engineering context beyond just aesthetics. Second, a practical framework for using AI to sharpen your own judgment. Third, and crucially, why taste by itself is not even enough. And by the end of the video, hopefully you will have a new mental model of how to use AI not just as a generator, but as a partner to develop and apply your unique human skills. So let's dive in. As I have mentioned in previous videos, LLMs are designed to produce a statistically plausible output. They absorb huge volumes of text and code, and then recombine those patterns at machine speed. However, by design, they tend towards the safe center of the distribution. And that is why so much AI-generated work feels, so familiar. Like, for example, these boilerplate Python functions that are correct but inefficient or just not very interesting from an engineering point of view. Or API documentation that, describes endpoints but not the actual real use cases for your specific business. And at some point, your engineering self starts to just get bored. That's something that I feel from time to time. And landing pages with different logos, but the same, 3-column kind of structure, product copy that could describe almost any app, essays with the clean headings and paragraphs, but this lack of personality. This is not a failure of the models. It is a success in producing the average good enough output. And the problem is average used to be hard enough to create a separation, but now it is so abundant, and before AI, mediocre work often reflected a lot of time, resources, or skill. But today it means something else. It means that the person just stopped at the first acceptable draft. And the economic shift is that AI compresses the cost of the first draft, which means the value moves downstream. The scarce part is now the ability to say, okay, this looks fine, but it is too generic. Or this sounds impressive, but it hides the real trade-off. Or, okay, this interface is polished, but it doesn't fit how our users actually think. In other words, the scarce skill is not generation anymore. It is refusal. So how do you get better at refusal? Well, start by training your taste. In this context, taste is about distinction under uncertainty. It is the ability to move from a vague feeling to a sharp diagnosis. Because many people can say something feels wrong, but not that many can actually say why. For example, some people cannot explain, so they say something like, okay, this failed because it sounds like every other SaaS product have the same issue, or this collapses a regulatory constraint into marketing language and will confuse the customer. The good news is that now we can use AI to accelerate the discovery process. First, pick one high leverage artifact from your week, paragraph, pricing explanatory, document, a dashboard label, something like this. And second, generate 10 to 20 versions of it with an AI model. And third, and this is the most important part, for each version, write one sentence that starts with, okay, this fails because. Force yourself to articulate the specific failure mode. And for an engineer, this could mean, generating 10 versions of a complex SQL query and diagnosing why 9 are less efficient or readable. 4, take the strongest version and rewrite it with a hard constraint like no buzzwords, one idea per sentence, or it must make sense to a first-time user. And finally, you ship the result and observe what happens. This process is powerful. It builds your rejection vocabulary. But I must say there is a hidden trap in becoming just a good selector. And I will explain what that is and how to avoid it in a moment. So, what is the trap? It is the curator's trap. It is a version of the future where the human's role is reduced to standing at the end of a machine-led pipeline, selecting the best output from a set of AI-generated ones. And that's a small and fragile role, isn't it? And if you think about it, historically, important work didn't emerge from detached selection alone. It emerged from co-creation under constraint. Builders are with reality, with budgets, with materials, with timelines, and with the consequences of getting things wrong. And that friction is where depth comes from. If your only job is to curate, you become a discriminator in a machine-driven loop. The analogy to machine learning is useful here. In a generative adversarial network, or GAN, the discriminator exists to help the generator improve. But once the generator is good enough, the discriminator is not the part that chips. The warning is not that taste has no value. It has enormous value, of course. The warning is that taste without authoring, without a stake, and without the friction of construction of building can become a very narrow and eventually replaceable role. So if you are not a curator, what are you? You are a builder who actively shapes the process. You use AI for active shaping, not passive selection. And this means you focus on adding what the model cannot add on its own. What does that look like? Well, first, holding the stake. A model can suggest a copy for a payment feature. However, it cannot hold the responsibility when that copy obscures a regulatory limit and support tickets arrive. So for now, the stake, dealing with the consequences, is on our human shoulders. Second, working with the things that are really new. The original new ideas often look wrong at the first time because they don't resemble the training dataset. They feel awkward or incomplete. A human can sit with that discomfort, protecting a fragile idea long enough for it to become tangible. Third, choosing direction. If you have worked at large companies, then you know that the biggest decisions are about a strategy and direction. What problem is worth solving? What trade-offs are acceptable? What do you refuse to optimize for? A useful question to ask whenever an AI output feels polished but hollow is this: what am I adding here that the model could not have added on its own? Good answers include, a real operating constraint, a user bottleneck learn the hard way, a strategy trade-off you are willing to stand behind. If you cannot name that addition, you may still be in a consumption mode. So let's bring this all together. We define taste as sharp diagnosis, work through a method to train it, and so why building is superior to curating. AI and LLMs made the first draft extremely cheap, but that doesn't make your job obsolete. It makes your judgment, your taste, more valuable than ever. But taste is not the destination. It is a side effect of doing serious work. It grows when you study strong work, when you chip into the real world, and when you stay close to the domain instead of floating above it. And if that way of thinking about AI engineering was useful to you, consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this one. And that's all for today. See you in the next one. Bye.